Today we're talking about ServiceTitan, Pros Bankruptcy, and some other industry news. All right, y'all, welcome to another episode of Talk of the Trades. We are full head of steam now. We're like, 6 episodes deep?
006.
All right, beautiful. We're veterans now. I'm going to just call it. So today on the show, we have a 2025 breakdown of the ServiceTitan trades report that they release. So every year they do a report where they talk about the trends. I'm going to talk about the Pros Bankruptcy. While we're not experts, hot topic in the news. March is Broadcore update for Google, some stuff on Geo-Tagging, and then we also had some stuff in here about potentially a new LLMs TXT file. So big news for SEO side. Cool. So let's jump into it, Aaron. First topic, the ServiceTitan study. So what are your just thoughts overall on the study in general? I know you kind of looked at it at a high level, and what are some things that stuck out?
Well, I mean, you made a really good point of just about like how many people they actually looked at. I think it was 1,000 contractors. What I love is that they got non-ServiceTitan people as well. It wasn't just ServiceTitan users, because I think that can be an echo chamber. The industries and the verticalization was also really interesting, and there's some synergy there. There are some industries that are just kind of stable. But for me, it was the big focus on communication with the customer. And it's easy to at least sustain. It's easier as long as you have a house call pro, a ServiceTitan, some kind of CRM that has your communications in it. That's the key for me. It's like from the first touch all the way till 6 years from now, so that you're storing equipment info and everything there. That's going to help you be a sustainable business where, you know, we get leads all the time and talk to clients that aren't on a CRM, and you'd be surprised the size. Like, talked to a $2.5 million contractor that doesn't have a CRM the other day. And it's wild. But I think the main thing really is the communication and touch point, and making sure that in ServiceTitan you're using the chats properly, and you're giving people multiple ways to communicate with you. Because I said for a long time, chat sucks. People don't want to use it. Even online booking is kind of tough because you've got to qualify that lead. But I think now everything is kind of caught up. People don't want to talk on the phone as much, which is key and clear. And I think just staying on top of it with the drip sequences, people were more on top of that as well.
One of the highlights out of there, they said over half, so 54% of successful contractors are doing certain engagement strategies. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong point. But the communication channel,
that was the 64% was the communication channel.
So 64% are contractors still rely on phone calls, which was interesting, but are increasingly adopting online booking forms and text messaging and all that. So all that to say, there's still like a long way to come on some of that other stuff. And you bring up like an interesting thought, like when you talk about ServiceTitan in general. Because one thing I didn't really, realize being new to the trades, I mean, there's a CRM, but then there's also an FSM, right? Field Service Management tool. And then now, what is your CRM supposed to do in terms of like nurturing, right? Because, we've seen the ServiceTitans of the world that kind of are able to do it all, from like a FSM to also like nurturing the client. But also now you see like new companies, maybe not new, but there's tools like Hatch, right? That we've talked to before about using in other areas. So just a side tangent on that, that like, if you are a business that is not using any form of CRM or FSM, really be thinking about like, how do you manage those pieces of your business? How do you manage the client profile and all the information there? How do you manage what's happening in the field and your inventory and your pricing and all that stuff? And then how are you managing like the nurture sequence, right? How are you getting back in front of people? Because we know from our experience in the unsold estimate campaigns we've run, I've seen those campaigns generate up to $3 million for water softener companies, right? Even more for foundation companies, to the point where it becomes, 8 to 10% of their revenue just on unsold estimates. So partly to do with the report, because it's important. I think they also talked about like the people who are, following up regularly with clients are winning more.
Yeah, and let's talk like specific tactics, right? I'm typically Dennis knows this, but like I'm typically testing at least one thing, whether it's AI or automation, that in every department that we have, I like to kind of test, and a lot of it comes back to data in the CRM. And so specifically something that we've been looking at a lot is like Google local service leads.
Yep.
One of the big pet peeves for us, there are a bunch of them, but if you're using like a call center outside of your office or even your CSRs, when you get a lead in and you miss it, it happens to everybody. But oftentimes what we see is about 20% of those aren't even in your CRM to begin with. And what happens is you aren't calling them back,
Yep.
or they're calling them back from a cell phone and not logging that call in ServiceTitan. So I believe Phones Pro is probably the best way to go on that, depending on company size. But if you're calling people back, but we have no connection in ServiceTitan, like we as an agency can't support the client because we don't know if this lead that called about a foundation repair issue or about a roofing issue,
Yeah.
we don't know if they got called back or not. So for us, we have to report to Google, hey, that was a good lead at this point. It was on the contractor. So you may have paid $50 to $100 for that GLS lead when if your team called them back through ServiceTitan and logged it as, oh, they were looking for an apartment complex.
Yeah.
You could get that $100 back. And when we try to give that information to a contractor, especially when you're using third-party answering services, try to get them integrated into your ServiceTitan so that they at least are adding that customer data. So there's a log there, so it can be reported on.
Yeah, and I think the overarching kind of idea there is like, what does your intake process look like for all of your customers? But you have a script when maybe they aren't fully aligned. And then why is it important is because your intake process is in essence building this customer's profile. So for instance, if somebody calls in and we know they want a replacement and that's noted on their file, and then we go in and we replace their system, right? Because our guy knew that going in. But now we know that client has had a replacement on, let's just say, April of 2025. So when we create future nurture audiences, we're not going to try to sell them replacements. We're going to try to sell them tune-ups, and we're going to try to sell them. But when is the right time to sell a tune-up on a brand new system, right? Maybe we're trying to sell them a membership down the road, as opposed to if we have somebody call in and the attribute of their profile is that they just need a tune-up, and maybe we label their system as 10 years old. So maybe the next few months we're going to let them know, hey, we have a replacement offer, right? So that's why the intake process builds the attributes around your customers, and then we can use those attributes from a marketing perspective down the road to remarket and retarget with the exact right message we need, right? So cool. Yeah, and the other just point was there was a big point in the ServiceTitan study that I'm seeing now that they were saying that 40%, nearly half of contractors with average revenues exceeding 10 million that do diligent follow-ups, they see anywhere from 11 to 15% additional revenue. So let's just say you're a $10 million shop. That's $1.1 to $1.5 million. That's like real money just by making sure that process is dialed in. So super interesting there.
And from my perspective as a customer, like I unfortunately have to get my pool redone, and I have a $25,000 estimate that's been sitting out there. And I understand like this business that I'm talking to is probably more of a new construction. They don't want to resurface whatever. $25,000 project seems like a pretty good project to me, right?
Yeah.
I've been following up with the sales guy, and I know the owner. We know the owner, but I'm trying not to like undermine his sales guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you want this job or not? Like, all I got to do is pick a color for the cool decking, follow up with me, and it just fascinates me the amount of, or the lack thereof, of follow up within the industry. And hey, even here, like we'll go through our HubSpot. We're like, okay, when's the last record? All right, we haven't talked to him in 72 hours.
Yeah.
If we're not talking to him, you better believe Scorpion is. You better believe somebody else is hitting them up. So just thinking about it that way.
And I have an exact story just like that. And I actually went through one of our own clients for a project that I needed on my house, and they came out, gave me an estimate, and I didn't hear I still haven't heard from them. But I told them in our monthly meeting, I was nervous too because you're having to like now shed light, but I was basically in essence like a secret shopper, right? And so all that to say, like I encourage you as a business owner to secret shop your own business and see what your experience looks like. You get so far away from it. And we want to trust people to manage it well. But sometimes things happen, like you uncover that you don't really have a great process or that we get away from our process, right? That's what practice is about and getting back to stuff. So, all that to say is if you don't know what your customer kind of journey or follow up looks like, try to go through it yourself, or maybe have a friend go through it just to see, right? Because if the team knows it's you, obviously they're going to give you like top tier service and be following up. Because this also goes into like buyer personas, right? It's like you need to get your pool resurfaced, right? For many reasons, but because you're a busy professional, you don't really have time to like slow down. And so sometimes people are like, oh, well, I don't want to bother them or pester them. Sometimes we need to be bothered. Like I need the follow up to get this thing fixed at my house because my wife is asking me every single week and I still haven't got it done. And I just wish, like, God, I wish there was just, like, I'm a lay down buyer at this point. I'm just like, how much is it? What do I need to do? And let's just get it done, right? So as opposed to sometimes you might get what are considered like tire kickers, right? And that happens, right? And maybe they're not going to appreciate the drip sequence or whatever. But you never know who you're dealing with is kind of the point of this story. And never assume that, we shouldn't be doing something.
Well, and I think this all tracks back to what we talked about earlier of if you're not tracking something in ServiceTitan, if you're not doing the outbound call, then you're never going to nail it. And for example, like in my situation with the pool, I have access to their HubSpot. And I know they don't track the remodels and the resurfacing in their HubSpot. They only track new builds. And so I know I'm not even a customer record in there. So then the owner has no oversight of the individual. And so it's you can't really optimize off of what you're not tracking. So that's huge props to ServiceTitan. We know that they're pushing all of those capabilities and making sure that we stay on top of people.
Yeah, and in terms of, the CRM, FSM, nurture thing, I think they're way ahead of the game and opposed to most. I think maybe the next closest might be like a Workies in my experience. I know House Call Pros come like a long way. And those are probably usually the top 3 kind of CRMs that we ship. But there's always like, you could always, couple like a House Call Pro with what's the one we've been talking about lately?
Well, Hatch and Go High Level. And even HubSpot, depending on your size. Like if you do content marketing, HubSpot is a really great CRM. They're just getting very expensive. They make you pay for anything and everything, but it just depends on your business. House Call Pro is making huge steps. Their inbox is really clunky. And I think honestly their main issue right now is documentation and onboarding. And ServiceTitan has done a great job of getting their APIs out there, having strategic partners, rolling their stuff in. And House Call Pro is still a good option for the smaller contractors.
In terms of value, like in what you pay, I don't think you can beat it right now, honestly. I mean, ServiceTitan is like the luxury. It's like the Gucci of, CRM, FSM, whatever you want to call it. While House Call Pro is like just your steady, solid, like their Wrangler jeans. You know what I mean? Like
it is. It can't compete for the bigger brands though. Once you get enough data, it's kind of like we talk about with ads optimization. Like once you have enough data, it really can take off. But if you're not feeding it enough data, then I'm talking about like our algorithms or Google Ads and things like that. It's really there's small things for it to optimize off of. And so House Call Pro is not nearly as good when it gets to those larger businesses. But yeah, it's a fun time, and you really can't get over bad data tracking and bad data input. So that's what we want to stress overall.
For sure. All right, next topic we had was the Pros Bankruptcy, right? So we are not like PE experts, guys, so just want to let you know. But this is like one of the more buzzier topics that I've been, seeing this week. And it was interesting. You hadn't heard about it yet, Aaron. But in essence, the story is that, this Pros, they were, bought by private equity, right? And this is, I guess one of the more recent stories of a PE group not being successful in the trades. And everything we've been, hearing is like, oh, like the trades can't fail. And, these big PE groups are having a lot of, success. But it seems like they have filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So that's huge. Also saying that they already have some purchase agreements in place, totaling 156 million. And then we learned this new term, stalking horse. Did you ever look that up?
Yeah. Just the lead buyers, and so
Okay.
who's there,
Got you.
stalking, stalking, like going in and watching it, and so they're the
Yep.
people that have been, in the news and understand. I know Apex was one of them.
Yeah, the other two were Any Hour Group, Columbia Home Services. Were all linked to that potentially. So, which is interesting. And I think they're saying like the cause was because they expanded too fast and had operational challenges. So apparently it was founded in 2007. They expanded rapidly through acquisitions, establishing a presence in 8 states, over 700 employees, and 600 trucks. Holy smokes. But they're saying that they just couldn't scale it, and obviously now they're going. They said debt was like 250 million, which is crazy to think about. Also, so I don't know. What's your overall hot take on it all?
Yeah. I think it was 2017 is what I saw here.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of them specifically, but our experiences with private equity is absolutely that. Like, get it when money's cheap, take the big note, and just pay off the interest and grow. But we've also experienced things like when you're purchased, because we've had a lot of clients get acquired. We've helped people acquire a lot of clients. You've got the whole brand DNA that's there. You've got the culture killers coming in, but also you've got some people that are really good at it that say, hey, you're doing great. I'm just going to be the financial arm. And I think money was cheap. I think it was a really aggressive strategy, clearly. But it just goes to show, like, when things get tough, it gets tough for everybody. I don't think this will be the first one. Honestly, I think we'll see more. But this is the new play by the private equities that are in trouble. But I mean, we've seen even things like a tuck-in gets derailed because you have a general manager that goes rogue and redoes the logo and puts it out there, and all of a sudden you've got like brand confusion. Or you may have some strategies, they'll buy like 5 groups in a city and then tuck them under one. Well, out of those 5 groups, you may have strengths. You may also have a lot of drama between them. The management team alone, just coming in and bringing a new manager, like, you've got to hire and develop well. And so it's beyond me. It's definitely interesting though, and I hope it doesn't become a trend, but it might.
Yeah, it's like I wonder if this is like going to be like where the economy is now. Is it going to be a trend towards we see like fewer larger groups that are still being successful, or will we see a lot more smaller groups that will be like successful? Because like our client the other day revealed that he was in like private equity, right? And so I immediately thought like, well, what's the scale there, and like what is that? Because even one of our business partners, he is involved in a portfolio of businesses as well. Like, what do you think? Do you, based on like economy and like this news, is there any like, are you feeling that it's going to go either way? Like, are we just going to have like the big 5, PE groups, or are we going to have like, still kind of the big players, but a bunch of little guys around?
Yeah, I think life is cyclical. Business is definitely cyclical. I think, and I'm not a forward thinker as much. I'm in the weeds historical data person, which is why I talk about history. But like, I think we're going to get that. We're going to get more of a monopoly we're going to get kind of the big 5. There's going to be consolidation within the big 5. They're going to grab these up. But then what's going to be beautiful about after that is you're going to get the bro equity, is what we've started talking about, of the locals, like our partner that is grabbing maybe 4 or 5, maybe not trying to conquer the world out of accumulating debt and getting a big note, but making smart acquisitions and coming up with different kind of tactics for the owners. So it's not just, hey, you're in and you're out. It's more of like, hey, we want to grow this big thing together. There will always be friction when somebody's acquired. It's going to happen, of all sizes. However, you're going to get the smaller ones competing. And then I think over time, you'll see equipment issues there of who gets the equipment first, and then I think you're going to make another run at it. So I think you're going to have some smaller platform companies and some bro equities that are starting to grow, and then some of them are going to get some gas behind them, probably in the next 5 years, 6 years. But there's a lot going on in our economy with generative AI, with the tariffs. So right now there's a lot of confusion and fear in the market.
It's going to be interesting. I think you're right. It's probably going to be a hybrid that we are going to see like the big 3, 4, 5 or whatever. But I think the amount of money that like some of these folks get, through their payouts, and then their, non-compete goes up, and they're the ones that built the business, right? And they know how to do it. And those that know how to do it and could do it at scale, I think Ken Goodrich is probably one of the best examples on how he started and then just built. Now he's got an empire and he's like the man. And then you're seeing guys like Tommy Mello, and other folks like form these equity groups. Like I forget the one we saw the other day, but
with Tommy or without?
I think it was Tommy, Chris, like there was like a few. I mean, Ish might have been involved. I don't know. I could be speaking wrong, but there was like 5 of them that were basically creating like this kind of. I think it was a capital group to be able to help others as well. So interesting to see what where it goes there. So.
Yeah, what's going to be fun for me, the pessimist mindset too of sometimes you get over your skis, and if you try to grow too fast, you're going to see some things like this as well. But, I can be a little conservative, but
for sure.
Wild times.
And I'm more of the big, broad thinker. That's why I asked her in that question. I'm like, what is it going to look like? Because you know better than I, and you've been part of the business more, but Ben would probably have a good perspective on it too. So, cool. So more kind of industry news that affects you guys from a marketing standpoint is the Google Broadcore update. So quick highlights on that. It started on March 13th and it commenced on March 27th. So, obviously it's a global impact, so affecting all regions. The nature of the update just said, unlike a penalty, this update aimed to promote or reward high-quality web pages, refining Google's core systems to better surface pertinent and satisfying content. So it sounds like more of the eat stuff. So I don't know. Do you know any other specifics on this, or what were you kind of tracking on it?
We really pay attention more to the local updates because that has a higher impact on the trades.
Yeah.
This is more of a deep content type of an update. I went over it with our SEO lead yesterday. We had a one-on-one, and we had a very small amount of clients that were negatively affected. We had, typically we'll have a couple clients that have huge growth, and I think there were some that had huge. Like 7% variance in growth and impression share, and then we had I think our worst one went down to like 4.2, but then the number 2 was like a negative 1.8, and so the gap between the worst one and the others was pretty large. So this one was really not one that impacted the trades. If it did impact the trades or your website and you're a trades company, there's probably something wrong with your backlink structure and maybe some orphaned content, some like in-depth content there. But as far as our clients go, we didn't really see anything too bad, and it did take about 13 days for it to roll out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't been in the loop on it, but I'm sure we'll have some more news. Katie's been doing a great job of providing updates on stuff like this.
Probably because we didn't have a lot of bad fires, so it didn't. It didn't get to you.
Yeah. So good. Glad. Talking about a local SEO, as you mentioned. So there's been this big kind of, maybe not, maybe just in our minds, it's been a big like debate on whether like geotagging images in your Google business profile actually matters, specifically like on reviews, right? And so there's been back and forth. There's companies out there like PinParrot who, they specialize in just doing that, right? And so there's been, I guess, thoughts in the industry that if you do that, it will have an impact on your local SEO. Well, there was a recent study that was done by Search Engine Land, and they basically said that no, it doesn't really have any impact. So you shouldn't need to geotag your images?
Yeah, based on the data they did, there was no growth, no increase or enhancement. And what it is because like Google, when you upload an image, it codes it, strips kind of the geotags and the metadata because that's just extra database storage that they don't need. I think the value though is getting those photos and getting videos from the customers onto your reviews. One of our clients asked me because he hit us up about it. Does that mean we shouldn't ask them for photos? Like, still ask.
Yeah.
Videos are the best because it's the most authentic. Also, making sure that if they upload it, putting it into your service agreement that any uploaded content from the client can be used in marketing efforts. Like that's user generated content. As we get into, maybe we talk next time about GPT's update, but as we get into more AI video and images, like getting content from your customers is key, and even the small guys can do it. So that's king. But also getting activity on your Google Business Profile is incredibly important. But the whole process, and this is near and dear to me because I spent a lot of time with our automation service that we have. So we've got a Google Business Profile automation service and optimization service that we built. And I specifically dug into, well, how can we automate geotagging images?
Right.
Maybe it was a little deceptive because I was going to like fake geotag and add geotags to images where it wasn't actually from that location. But the steps between that, like stock photos, the steps between that were so consuming with time that that I was thankful after I did research and talked to 3 of the people that were in this search engine land. I actually reached out to and talked to about 6 months ago about this.
Okay, cool.
And I slid into the DMs. And they validated what I was talking about. They're like, geotagging is a flaw. The way Google uploads photos, it removes that metadata.
Yeah.
But it's a sexy, unique selling position if you're trying to push a piece of software.
Yeah, and I think part of like SEO is like it's always been so competitive, and sometimes we get like we want something to be true so we can do it and like do better for our clients, right? But in this case, sometimes it's like Google just comes out and they like rain on your parade and say, actually, what you've been doing, not really, because I think I think it's like the and maybe it's not, maybe it's definitive now, but like the frequency of Google posting, like what should that look like and what's the impact there? I think that would be a great study because I think we did something like that back in like 2022 when we had a lot of those private equity brands and we were able to do it like at scale across those and we didn't see. But I think recently you've been seeing opposite impacts on other Google properties, not necessarily the GBP, right? Specifically like GLS. So interesting, but I think all that to say is like you got to be cautious on some of this SEO stuff and whether it's good or not. I mean, the benefit of being like a trailblazer and a pioneer is like you do it, and if it works, then awesome, you're ahead of the game. But if you don't have the bandwidth to do it, sometimes it's okay not to be an early adopter. And I think this is one of those cases where you potentially could have like saved yourself a bunch of time and stuff. But credit to Search Engine Land for doing that study and letting us know. So interesting to see what's going to happen to some of these companies who've built their business around that. But the point you were making earlier is it still is super important from a customer experience standpoint, right? While you might not get like the black and white technical SEO benefits, there are benefits to it, right? Like you want to have a good presence online, and reviews are one thing, but if you're anything like me, when I'm like looking at reviews on Amazon, sometimes I want to see like the actual product in real life as opposed just to the product photos. And a lot of times we have like very polished, stuff on my GBP, but this user generated content gives like a really honest depiction of kind of what's happening. So all that to say is like, while you're not going to see a lot of benefit from SEO, there still is benefit to it, right?
Yeah, there is. And I want to add 2 things. One's a tinfoil hat.
Okay.
The first is it's accountability. It's in the same way that if you know that something's going to be tracked in your CRM, then people are going to fall in line. Your CSRs are going to take a little bit more time. They're going to put more notes in there because you're tracking that. In the same way, if your techs know in the field that there's a requirement for images, or they will be asking the customers via email sequences or anything along those lines to get photos, there's an accountability of cleaning up your workspace, not leaving nails in the yard, making sure that the garage door is clean. Like there's a lot more there from an accountability standpoint.
Yeah, man. I didn't even think about that. That's 100% true.
And then tinfoil hat, which we might need to put one here.
Nice.
And just speaking from like the way software is developed, more importantly than the image having metadata on it, what I would say is user profiles within Google, because you have to have a user profile in Google to be able to leave a Google review, right?
Right.
So Google typically has our location data anyway.
Oh.
And so I would lean on the localization of images being uploaded more on the user's profile information and going off of that. So like if you're in an area called Stone Oak, like here in San Antonio, the frequency of reviewers in that area uploading images is going to be more relevant from my perspective than them all taking photos that are geotagged and uploaded. And so that's where I've done zero research on that, but logically it makes sense to me.
So let's say if that was a like that was a thing, right? And you wanted to like prioritize that. Like some things that jump out to me is like, how do you then get more of those types of reviews? And is it like spiffing your guys? Like, hey, you get $5 per review, but you get another $10 if they leave an image with it, right? Yeah. And if you do it in the Stone Oak area or XYZ area, you get another $2. You know, is that like a wise strategy? Maybe not those dollar amounts, but I'm just saying like that whole model. And if it is awesome, but what else do you think could we do?
Yeah, we've seen, so a lot of people do that. It's been successful. I think the spiffing is more successful for outbound callers to get book jobs. What is more successful is just knowing the scoreboard. So if you're on Podium or if you're on ServiceTitan or wherever, having a scoreboard of reviews by employee or by technician. Like, okay, plumber A, Joe got 50 reviews and he ran 60 calls last month, but Frankie ran 60 calls and got 10 reviews last month. Okay, what's going on with that?
Gotcha.
That level of accountability and knowing that that's a part of their grading of how they're doing at your brand, I think is really important. The other tidbit or a tip here, like in ServiceTitan, you know, one of the things I like about Podium is the follow-up sequencing on reviews, where you'll send out the review request. You can hammer that person multiple times in their sequencing via SMS and email. With ServiceTitan native, I see a lot of clients have it turned off where it's just a one shot, one kill. I said I was going to stop saying that, but one shot, one kill. There is a toggle though, where you can turn it on to send a follow-up. So at least sending two, and then making sure that you're doing SMS and email outreach for these reviews. And so just a couple of tweaks within your ServiceTitan setup that can help lift it.
What is your, so real quick, this is strictly for Katie, our SEO, she would love that I'm about to say this, is that you cannot incentivize people to leave your reviews. So don't do that, and we're not saying that. I think you can incentivize your people to like get reviews and let people know that they can leave a review, but we don't want to incentivize anybody. So footnote there, which I totally forgot what I was just going to counter and ask you about in terms of
follow-up sequencing on reviews.
Oh yeah. So what is your like sweet kind of spot for like touches? Because I like the like, or what should the cadence be before you stop? I like the 3 touches in like 7 days, right? So one right after the job or is closed and it's completed, and it starts with the technician asking for it, and then an automated touch, and then from that point we have another one like in 3 days, another one in 4 days, and then we're done. What do you think in terms of cadence? If someone's out there thinking like, well, how many times should I ask after the review?
It depends on job type, in my opinion. I would go 3. I love your 3 and 7 if it's a repair. So HVAC repair, softener needed to service, something along those lines.
Gotcha.
If it's a new install, if it's an HVAC unit, that's a little different. I would still do 5 to 7 times for an HVAC unit, but I would layer it out over a longer sequence. And so hey, 30 days later, we still haven't gotten a review. I think it's
Yeah.
totally okay. We want to hear about our feedback. Like, how's it working now that you've had 30 days with your new unit? Because
Yeah.
getting a new unit and then telling somebody one day later, sending them feedback is different. If you're installing as an electrician, like car charging stations, like that's a cool, sexy, like nice thing that they're
Yeah.
happy about, or a
Yeah.
generator. Like that's something you can ask specifically for photos on and say, we want to see how it looks, like brag about it. I think those are okay to layer out 5 to
Gotcha.
7 times, but just lengthen the process and ask a little bit more unique questions on the 5th, 6th, and 7th touch.
Gotcha.
But those are just, something cool that ServiceTitan does is you are able to filter by job type.
Yeah.
And so you can have different setups based on job type.
Very cool.
And one more thing, I'm so sorry. One thing a lot of, especially water softening companies, they don't want to do is the maintenance requests.
Oh yeah.
Like your highest frequency is maintaining commercial water softeners or getting into the home on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And a lot of them want to reject asking for reviews from those people. However, you can ask every single time. And then you can turn it off once they've left you a review.
Right.
Like those are the easiest ones and should be the easiest ones that you see every single day.
Yeah,
or every
because
single month.
yeah, sometimes like each new visit, if they haven't left a review, it's another opportunity for us to ask. The other thing I've found compelling too, when you're really talking about reviews and trying to get as many as you can, is we've known of some companies, they don't even actually do work for the client, but they're still asking a review based on how they felt in with the call center handling their call, right? They didn't pick us our estimate, but how do they feel about the entire customer journey? Because you can leave a review that says, hey, like I didn't actually use them, but they were super fair, they were super transparent. I just chose the other company because of whatever, and so I think that is like the next level black belt of probably getting reviews, because it doesn't say anywhere like they must be a customer and done business with you. I mean, technically they're still like interacting and doing business with you regardless, and so they could be leaving a review on whether it's finished work or how the customer service representative treated them, because we all value like different things, I think. So something to consider, from that standpoint. So cool. All right. One last quick topic. This, because we always got to talk about AI, is the whole idea of this LLM.txt file. So to get really nerdy, you want to talk about kind of what a robot's TXT file is right now and how it relates to SEO, and then what could LLMs do?
Yeah, absolutely. So robots.txt file, we talk about even on the writing content for users or writing it for the robots, because that's how Google elevates rankings. This whole ranking shift that we talked about, or that rollout, is basically their bots going out, crawling the web, coming back, and then identifying what needs to be ranked where. So there's a robots.txt file. It strips a lot of the visual elements that humans have to go through on a website. So it makes it real clean. It's just source code showing, hey, this is what's on this page, this is what's on this page. Part of an SEO and technical SEO's job is making that file as clean as possible so there's not extra noise for the robots to go through.
Yeah.
What we're seeing with LLMs, they all have their own crawlers. If you're using, we're a client of SEMrush, they have their own crawler to go see in the web. Ahrefs, all these SEO tools have crawlers. Well, LLMs have crawlers. There's a bunch of funny memes about, DeepSeek stealing GPT's data, stealing, like they're going out there and they're stealing basically our website content data, but the LLMs are reading as if they are Google's bots, right? And so there have been strategies, and I talked to some SEO people that focus on like big travel websites and very large directories, where they actually tell and they write files specifically for the LLMs, and then they spam the heck out of it. They remove all the other stuff because it's the Wild West right now. If you can write a website that says AC Repair Baltimore, we're the best AC Repair Baltimore, here's a bunch of fake reviews, put it into an LLM, like only ChatGPT's reading this JavaScript file. That's something that I think can be really, really abused. And I think at the smaller level, like a contractor, 10 million and under, it's not really something that's happening. But I
Yeah.
think at the bigger level, it's something to pay attention to.
Oh yeah, the more resources you have, and it goes back to that like early adoption, and can you like, do you have the resources to do something like that? So super interesting to just stay on top of that, because I think like you said, very much wild wild west right now, and like how do we fine tune some of that stuff? And Google went through the same stuff early on, right? Like one of the, kind of black hat tactics back in the day was like all this white text on, pages and stuff, right? And so well, maybe we're not at that level with some of the things that you were talking about on these travel websites, but I think it leaves the door open for that when we start seeing people get really creative and how can you like manipulate the system. And eventually we're going to need some sort of baseline because everybody is taking everybody's information and everybody's data. Maybe DeepSeek did it to ChatGPT, but ChatGPT did it to like all of us, and all these people who've been publishing their, information and expertise and thought leadership. So at the end of the day, like we just need to all like share the content, but let's protect us all, right? Because we're going to be the ones consuming it. And then if we have a level playing field on how we rank for that stuff, then even better. And now we can all follow like a certain process.
Yeah. And here's a clip coming from my conversation again yesterday with our SEO lead. So Bianca, clip this unless I mess it up. Our clients want to know, how often am I coming up in LLM searches?
Yes.
The simple answer is, we don't know. The reason we don't know is there's no analytic tracking in the LLM models. And so while we can put some tools into GTM, your Google Tag Manager, and into Google Analytics, we can track how many times the ChatGPT bot hits our website. We can do that. What we cannot do is discern whether that bot is actually pulling your data because a user asked for it, or if it's crawling so that it can expand its database. And so, like right now, we've got a site that Katie and I were talking about that maybe gets like 5,000 total visits from unique users on a monthly basis. It got 1,200 visits from LLMs in the same time frame.
Wow.
That if you have 5,000 unique visits, that doesn't mean, anyway, it's one of those scenarios like the math doesn't math.
Yeah.
So they have to be using it. And also, they may be using your website's content to answer something, but the source could be other people. So we don't even know. They might be in a ChatGPT thread listing 10 sources that they use to come up with an answer.
Yeah.
They may not have used just those 10. They may have used those 10 plus 20 others.
Yeah.
And so it's just not clear yet.
How are we able to see where these LLM searches are coming from? Is there a source in like Medium for them now, or you think that's coming, or what?
She's putting a listener into our Google Tag Manager.
Ooh.
And so we're then creating not key events, but like micro events that pushes based on the crawler source. And so people are trying to learn that. I think, I don't want to invest a ton of time into that yet, because the second that's up and running, GPT is going to say, integrate your Google Analytics with us now, or whatever. And
that's funny.
It's one of those cost-benefit analysis of, we can go and try to figure it out aggressively, or would you like for us to just try to get you more leads?
Yeah.
And so,
and sometimes that's part of it, and I will say, adding to his clip is we've been very successful in getting our clients, I don't know, very successful, but we have gotten clients AI snippets at the top of pages a lot. Aaron's words, and we've done that, I think, mostly by following kind of like the EEAT, like just tried and true method, and we've been honoring that, and we've been rewarded in many cases. But I think eventually there's going to need to be more layers to it so we understand how to truly do it. So exciting to see what's going to potentially happen there from an SEO perspective. So cool. Well, anything else on your mind?
I think this has been a little bit of a longer a podcast. So,
oh, dude, I got the wife text already. Are you still recording?
Yeah.
Yes, man.
Yes, ma'am. We are proof. I want to talk about the team building, but just briefly, we did a team building at the leadership team level this week, and it was one of those Lego skill set going into a Lego. It's called Bricks here in San Antonio. We were there for 4 hours, and
Yeah,
just
it was
some
awesome.
really cool takeaways.
Oh yeah.
What were some of your quick top takeaways?
Well, number one, I was just like relieved that it was impactful because, it seems a little like elementary. It's like you're going to play with Legos basically. And in my mind, I'm like, how is this going to like relate to leadership? But I just trusted. And I was like, shout out to Ron, who was our instructor there at Bricks. And he was awesome just at navigating us through it. And it's so interesting how you can parallel like creating or building something potentially as a team or alone, and the leadership lessons that can come out of that, right? If it is, orchestrating it accordingly. So my big takeaway was like there was just a ton of value that came from that type of exercise, and I think the biggest one for me was like the communication one. So there was a part where I was like separated in a separate room, and then I had to come in and try to instruct the team on how to build something. But I had very specific like parameters where I could not like say certain colors or certain words or certain things. So I had a limited like vocabulary and things that I could tell the team. And they were getting frustrated because what happened is later, the instructor let somebody else come in and say all the full details. They were able to say colors and shapes and everything.
Numbers,
And
yeah.
so I'm sitting over here like, WTF, dude, like this guy. And meanwhile, I'm like thinking the whole team hates me because they were like, why didn't Dennis just tell us as to start with? Because what you guys were initially building had the essence. You had like what I thought were wings or whatever, but ended up they were flippers. And I was thinking it was a bird, but it was actually a dolphin. But I couldn't say any of that. But here comes Ryan. He's like, yeah, it's a dolphin with flippers and a tail. And then like seeing the shape just totally change to what it needed to be was really cool. So the communication part of it was super interesting, and just having perspective on that was nice. So what about you? What was your big takeaway?
I mean, for me, it was the planning and the strategy and making sure that we see things. And we talk about it a lot when we get clients. It's like, okay, day one, I want leads. Great, we understand that, but are we set up to take these leads? And for us also, it's onboarding tasks and making sure that when we onboard tasks, we're asking the right questions, we're getting the right information, so the SEO team isn't running around trying to do all these audits without access, or that we're just like stuck, well, nope, I need GSC access, or I need this or that. But like the fact that one of them, he said, okay, I need you guys to take 30 seconds, look at it. And it made me question, I'm so confident in myself that when I get a task or I hear about something I'm working on, how often do I take a step back and plan, make sure I've got all the right tools necessary, and then go? Because I think once you get into it, it's like, okay, ready to go, and I just start working. And that was a really powerful move as well.
Yeah, well, what makes me think about that whole thing right now is like you've been saying lately, like we win in the setup, right? Like we win when we have everything set up accordingly and expectations are set. And like that final exercise we did together, we had to put 125 Lego pieces together in like an unorthodox fashion. And no team had ever done it as fast as we had, according to Ron, right? Or even complete it, right? Which was like very flattering. And I think we had like 5 minutes to spare, which was huge. But what did we do? We won in the setup because because he said, take 30 seconds, right, before you go. And he said, a lot of times people just jump in. But we were like, no, let's do this. And you had an initial idea. Ryan had chimed in with his idea. Because we don't have egos and we all, work together, we landed on the best plan, and then we got started. And then as we were going through, Ben had a great idea to make us more efficient and to protect like the final product. And then before you know it, dude, like bam, we're done, and we're getting like this great feedback. So all that to say, I think that plays right into your idea of winning the setup. So and maybe I'll tell the hot fries story next week.
Yeah,
you guys tune in, and I'll tell the hot fries story. So cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning into this episode. Appreciate it. Again, like, subscribe, leave any comments. Check us out on Reddit. We have a new subreddit. Right?
Yeah, some people are trolling us,
I know, dude. There's one guy that he's just a real pill.
Yeah.
So let us know, guys. Appreciate y'all watching. Later. Bye. Sweet. Did that go?